Hi everybody, I wanted to take a few minutes and let's talk about setting up the Floriani Workspace so that you become familiar with the screen, what you're looking at, some of the different things that you can do to set the preferences to work better for you, how you see things, how you view things. So the first thing I want to look at is let's go up here to Program Preferences. Now, when you first install your Floriani software, it's a good idea to come in here and set some of your preferences. I recommend that when you do an update, you come in here and do a quick review as well. Sometimes when there is an update, I've noticed that there are defaults in the software that get reset. And so I'll find that I'm not seeing something the way I did before. And this is where I can reset that and work forward. So the first thing I want to talk about is the default save format. And your default save format should be in Floriani WAF. And a WAF file is a working file in Floriani. So if I have this saved as a WAF file and I decide that I want to change the background, I want to change some colors, I want to add something to it, it is much easier for me to come in and add the additional or remove whatever it is that I want to remove and create the file without having a lot of interference. It also makes it easier when you need to remove overlap stitches and different things like that. So I always suggest that you save your files two ways. When you're working on the file, you save it as a WAF, and then when you're finally ready to take it to your machine, you're going to save it in the format of your machine file. So the next thing I want to talk about is, in this particular screen, is your Floriani color, or your colors. Sorry, all of these colors down here are specific to what you have set. I have mine set to Floriani Poly, which means that all of these colors down here, if I were to choose one or search for one, this is the colors that Floriani has to offer. Now, there are many types of threads out there that are quality that you can use. So if you are working on a project and you know that, for example, you're working with Madeira threads, you can set that to Madeira and it will give you their thread patterns. Now, when you start to download or work with projects from the internet that are designed by other companies, a lot of times you'll see where it'll say that it's a Madeira Poly or a Quilter Select or something else. So if you want to see the design in their format, you can switch that over and then try to find your equivalents in whichever thread that you're working. So this is a good little feature to be on screen and check your color palettes to see what it will probably look like when you stitch it out. So the next tab I want to talk about is environment, and in environment you have the ability to set the units that you want to work in. You can either work in inches or in metric. Now I find that I worked in metric a lot when I was on a flatbed machine. I had a Husqvarna Viking. Now that I have moved to a 10 needle, my machine is a little bit different, and so inches actually seems to work for me. Also, when you're working with different files, for example, the quilt blocks that we work at creating, because we know we're doing an 8-inch quilt block, it's a lot easier to set my workspace to 8 inches and find my 8 inches so that I can put my designs and my stitches and other things like that in there and know that I'm within the right width and height that I need to be. So currently I have mine set at inches. Now, autosave means that as you're working in the program, the software will automatically save what you're doing, and you can set this so that it doesn't do it. You can set it so it saves every minute. up to a 10-minute time frame. And I suggest that you auto-save this, especially when you're going to get into extremely detailed work that you are, say, digitizing, and you are doing it in very small increments. There's nothing more frustrating than being in the middle of a design and the power blips or something happens and you lose the design and you haven't saved it. It's a lot of work to go back and redo. So I find that anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes is appropriate for the autosave feature. The image editing, this is when you are working, say, to create a cross stitch or a digitized design, and you want to go into Paint to, you want to go into a graphics program to make some changes to your project. And so currently I have mine set at Microsoft Paint, which is because that's what Windows has. Now, I'm also reviewing other programs, and eventually I will add that other program here, and so automatically when I need to go in and make adjustments, it'll take me to that particular software so that I can make those adjustments. And that's anything from Photoshop to Adobe Illustrator to, oh my word, the list is really long, so you can pretty much choose that as you want. So you also have the option to set the language on your machine. And so if English is not your primary language, or you aren't, comfortable in how this is going to work, you do have the opportunity to choose several others. I'm unaware of any others that are available, but it looks like English and Spanish are two that are there. So in the View tab, I want to show you what I'm talking about here. Let's look at the highlight selection, and you'll notice that mine is set to purple. Now I have to close this box to show you what I'm talking about. But if I wanted to work on a particular area, say right here, you'll notice that as I click on different things, they're turning purple. That means that is the area that I have selected to work in. So if I wanted to change, for example, this particular color right here, and I wanted to make it an orange, it's highlighted, so it says that is what I'm working on. Now I've told it I want that color to be orange, and you'll notice when I click off of it, it is now an orange color. So that is what the highlight is telling you to do. Now, most people that I've talked to find that if you pick a highlight color that you don't use very often, sometimes it makes it easier to work with the highlights because it's going to stand out when you view it. So depending on the project, there are times that I will come in and I will set this to be a bright yellow or a funky orange or something like that, so that it definitely stands out and I know what I'm looking at. So when we talk about the highlight tree selection, now we're talking about over here in the sequence view. If I want to work, for example, with this, you notice that now this is a teal color. So if I want to change this, this teal now matches this teal. If I wanted to change that, I would drop it down, pick a color. I usually try to, same type of thing, depending on the pattern I'm working with, I will change that so that it's a color that stands out. For example, I'll do a hot pink or something like that so that I know what particular area I'm working in. So down here in the theme color, this gives you the ability to change the entire look of the screen that you're working on. You have 4 choices, and just to show you, I'm going to change this to aqua, and you'll see how the screen is going to change. Now, this is totally a personal call on how you want it set up. It depends on, the lighting and what looks best to you. So you can change that as you will. Now I know that, you know, silver for me is fine. I'm comfortable there. Digitizing is a tab that we will get into later on as we start to work with different programs, so I'm not going to go into that. Now, let's talk about grids. When we talk about grids, we're talking about this particular area right here, and that is the on your workspace. Now, you have the ability when you're working in Floriani to turn these off or turn them on. Most of the time, I have them on. Now, for this particular setup, I typically work in inches, therefore I have mine set to 0.25 inches each, which means I have 8 blocks going this way and 8 blocks going that way. So when I look at my design, I can tell you that this particular area is each 0.25 inches. And I've told the software that I want my lines to be gray and that I want them to show as dashed lines. Now you can show this as solid lines or you can show it as dots, whichever you prefer, but I prefer the dashed lines. Now on the other side, we have the green, which is our outlying area, which because the inside area is set at 0.25, this means that each one of these grids is a 1-inch area. And so I've got this set to be 8 by 8 because I'm at 0.25 by 0.25. So that tells me that each one of these blocks is an inch and everything, each little gray area is a 1/4 inch. You have the ability to tell the machine that you want it to baste a project. This is particularly important when you have something such as a towel. Now there is a based icon up here that you can use, but you want to set the amount or the length of your baste. I'm sorry. The reason I say this is because sometimes when you do the basting stitch, I've noticed that the basting stitch is too long and you get stitches that are so far apart that you're actually not getting the baste that you're trying to get. So this apparently has changed, but I usually keep this between 3 to 5, which is pretty much a little tighter than most, but I'd rather have my my project basted down really good. So I told it, you'll notice I went in and I changed it to 3 and I clicked OK. So now when it does the baste, my basting stitches will be 3 millimeters apart. Let's talk about file associations. Now, file associations is the ability for your machine to recognize the file that you're working with and then the file that you want to export to take your project to your machine. So you'll notice that I have Viking selected here, and that is because I used to own a Viking, but since I have upgraded to a 10 needle, I am now in the PES or the Brother format. So what you need to do is you need to find your particular machine, whatever it is, find its format, you need to click it, and then you need to click OK and tell the software that this is what you want your files to be when you save to take to your machine. Now remember, don't uncheck this Floriani WAF file because you will be using that as you create, and that is what your files are going to auto-save to, is a WAF file. So let's talk a little bit about all of the different icons that you can see on your screen. Now you'll notice that in some cases I have more icons than some of you do, and that's because I have some additional Floriani software that is installed. You can move all of these sections around so that it makes it easier for you to find certain things. For example, if you find that you do a lot of copy and paste and you want it moved, if you look really close, you'll see these little
12 p.m.
little
Battery
dots.
95%.
So if you put your mouse over these particular dots, you can move them to another area. This is actually really handy because if you're working with something and you want to have certain things like associated really closely, you can do that. It also allows you to make a complete and total custom setup so that you don't have your most used tool in an area that it's difficult to find. The other thing I want to talk about is our toolbars menu here. All of these icons are represented in this toolbars menu. So if I remove, let's say, a couple of these, you'll notice that the icons have disappeared from this part of my screen, this part of my screen, which means that if I want to use those tools, I'm going to have to get to them in a different way. If I want to see them again, I'm just going to come back in and I'm going to recheck them, and it will come back up. And again, I can go in and I can organize these. If I want more on this particular side than I want up top, I can do that. It's totally up to you how you want this to be. When it comes to this down here, you've also got the same options. If you don't want to see them down here, you don't have to have them down here. That's complete and total discretion, up to you. The icons themselves are integrated into what you're going to do. Again, you can set those as you learn to work with features or different things. So hopefully this has given you a little bit of an overview on how to set your workspace up, how to explore and see what is out there, what you can change and make things personal for your use. So again, if you have any questions, let me know. I'm more than happy to help, and we will see you the next time.